Imagine a beautiful girl who ate raw meat straight from the hunt. Blood stained her lips, warm and red, and wild animals followed her like loyal guards. Even the fiercest lions walked beside her as if she were their queen. The village stood frozen whenever she passed. Her name was Zahara, and the reason she never touched cooked food would shake every heart before the moon fell again. Long ago, in a quiet land in Africa, there stood a village called Mabira. Mabira rested beside a thick emerald forest that breathed like a living thing. Tall trees stretched toward the sky, their leaves whispering secrets to one another. The people of Mabira lived simple lives. Their huts were round, built from clay and straw, warm against the cold nights. Farms of cassava, maize, and plantains surrounded the village like a soft green blanket. Every morning, men walked into the forest with bows and traps. Some went to the river to fish, singing old songs as they cast their nets. Women lit fires and cooked meals in black pots, stirring thick soups that filled the air with spice and smoke. Children ran barefoot, laughing, chasing chickens, and listening to stories told by the elders beneath the baobab tree. Mabira was peaceful. Mabira was alive. One evening, as the sun bled orange into the sky, a stranger appeared at the edge of the village. She was tall and graceful, her skin dark and smooth like polished stone. Her hair fell in thick coils down her back, tangled with leaves and feathers. She wore no shoes, only a rough cloth wrapped around her waist, and on her back hung a woven pouch filled with fruits and roots. Her eyes were sharp, bright, and watchful, like someone who had lived long inside the wild. She stopped at the first hut and waited. The villagers noticed her quickly. Whispers spread like fire through dry grass. A stranger, a forest girl, someone unknown. The village chief, Elder Baraka, stepped forward. His beard was white, his back bent, but his voice carried strength. "You are welcome in Mabira," he said. "What is your name, child?" The girl lowered her eyes. "Zahara," she replied softly. "And where do you come from?" Elder Baraka asked. She paused. "From where the trees grow thick and the ground remembers blood." No one understood what that meant, but her voice held no threat. Only wait. The elders allowed her to stay. They gave her a small hut near the forest edge. Zahara thanked them with a nod. She spoke little. She smiled often. And she slept with her door open, facing the trees. The first strange thing the village noticed was her eating. At sunrise, while women prepared hot porridge and roasted yams, Zahara walked into the forest. She returned with guavas, wild berries, and roots still wet with soil. She ate them whole. No washing, no peeling, just bite, chew, swallow. When meat was cooked, she refused. When fish was grilled, she turned away. "I do not eat fire food," she said calmly. The women laughed at first. "Cooked food gives strength," said Mama Rena, shaking her spoon. "Raw food is for animals." Zahara smiled. "Then animals and I are not so different." Children followed her everywhere. "Why don't you cook?" asked a boy named Sephu, no older than 8. "Fire steals life," Zahara answered. "I eat life." The words spread through Mabira like a strange song. Soon, other things began to happen. At night, animals came close to the village. Antelope stood near the farms without fear. Birds perched on Zahara's roof. Once, a leopard was seen lying outside her hut, tail flicking gently in sleep. No one was harmed, but no one slept well. One morning, hunters returned with a fresh kill, a young gazelle. Blood still steamed from the open flesh. Zahara watched silently as they cut the meat. Then the hunter Callow did something foolish. "Try this," he said, holding out a raw slab, laughing. "Since you love wild food so much." Zahara took it. Without hesitation, she bit down. Blood ran across her chin. Her teeth tore through flesh with ease. She chewed slowly, calmly, eyes half closed as if tasting something precious. The village screamed. Children ran. Women covered their mouths. Elder Baraka dropped his staff. Zahara swallowed, wiped her mouth, and bowed her head politely. "Thank you for sharing," she said. From that day on, fear lived beside curiosity. She grew stronger each sunrise. She carried water jars alone. She outran the hunters. She lifted fallen trees after storms. And the animals followed her more closely than ever. One night, the forest roared, not in anger, but in warning. Drums of thunder rolled through the trees. Branches cracked. Footsteps shook the ground. The villagers rushed from their huts. holding torches and children. Zahara stood still. Out of the darkness emerged a lion. Huge, scarred, golden-eyed. It walked straight past the spears and stopped before Zahara. She placed her palm on its head. The lion lowered itself, obedient as a dog. "My name is Nuru," Zahara said quietly. "He walks with me." The village could not breathe. Later that night, Elder Baraka called for answers. Zahara's voice trembled for the first time. "My past is not safe," she said. "If I tell you, danger will follow." A distant howl echoed through the forest. Not a lion, not a wolf. Something broken. Zahara's face went pale. "It has found me," she whispered. The ground shook again, and the trees began to part. The trees at the edge of Mabira bent outward as something massive pushed through the undergrowth, branches snapping like dry bones under invisible weight, while the air grew thick and cold, and every torch flickered as if afraid to stay lit. Because whatever approached did not move like an animal that belonged to the forest, but like something twisted by it, something that had forgotten how to be what it once was. And Zahara stood frozen with her hand still resting on Nuru's mane, her breath shallow, her eyes wide with pain rather than fear, as the villagers slowly realized that the danger she had warned them about was no longer a story from the dark, but a living truth stepping into their home. The creature emerged fully into view, towering over the tallest man in Mabira, its body wrapped in coarse black fur that clung to muscles stretched unnaturally tight, its arms long enough to scrape the ground as it walked, its legs bent wrong at the knee, and its eyes glowing red not with rage, but with sorrow so deep it seemed to spill into the night. And when it opened its mouth, the sound that came out was not a roar, but a broken cry like a child calling for someone who never answered. Women fell to their knees clutching their children. Men raised spears with shaking hands unsure whether to defend or flee. And even Nuru the lion lowered his head and growled low in his chest, as if sensing a familiar pain rather than an enemy. While Zahara took one slow step forward, tears slipping freely down her face as she whispered a name the villagers had never heard before, but somehow understood carried a lifetime of love and regret. "Amari," she said, her voice cracking as the creature stopped moving and lifted its massive head toward her, its red eyes softening as recognition sparked within them, and the forest itself seemed to hold its breath as Zahara spoke again, louder now, filled with sorrow, telling the truth she had buried for years, explaining that Amari was not a monster born of darkness, but her younger brother, the boy who once followed her everywhere with bare feet and endless laughter, the boy who trusted her more than the sun and the rain, the boy she had destroyed without meaning to when she took him to the forbidden river hidden deep within the forest where the old spirits slept beneath the water and punished those who broke their laws. She told them how long ago, when she herself had been barely older than Sephu, she had wandered into the forest chasing birds until thirst drove her toward a river that glowed faintly even at midday, how she drank without knowing it was sacred, how the magic changed her body so fire-touched food burned her from the inside, while raw life fed her strength and bound her to animals who recognized the spirit mark within her, and how Amari, curious and loyal, had followed her days later and drunk from the same water despite the spirit's rule that only one soul could be chosen in a generation. Zahara's voice shook as she explained that where the magic had balanced itself within her, it shattered inside Amari, tearing his body between human and beast, stealing his words, warping his hunger, and filling his nights with endless pain. And when the village they once lived in saw what he had become, they screamed and called him demon and raised weapons to end him, forcing Zahara to flee with her brother into the deep forest where even spirits feared to walk, until one night she realized she could no longer protect him because his hunger grew stronger and his sadness deeper, and every cooked thing poisoned him, while raw food alone could not calm the curse fully. So she left him with the animals and ran, hoping distance would dull the bond that tied him to her soul, never knowing that blood and magic remember each other forever. As Zahara finished speaking, the creature let out another long cry that echoed through Mabira and curled into every heart listening. And slowly, carefully, Amari lowered himself to the ground in front of her like a giant child afraid of being struck, pressing his forehead into the dirt as his massive hands trembled, and Zahara dropped to her knees and held him, her small frame against his enormous body. Whispering apologies she had rehearsed in silence for years while Nuru stepped forward and rested beside them as guardian and witness. And in that moment something shifted among the villagers because fear gave way to understanding and understanding softened into compassion. Elder Baraka lowered his staff and spoke not with command but with humility, saying that Mabira had seen many strange things but never a curse born from love rather than evil, and that no brother should be hunted for trusting his sister. And Mama Rena wiped her eyes and stepped forward, saying that if raw food was the price of keeping a family together, then Mabira could learn to respect a different way of living. And even the children crept closer, no longer hiding, seeing not a beast but a wounded soul who cried the way they cried when hurt. But Zahara raised her head sharply then, her eyes filled with fresh fear, warning them that kindness alone would not be enough, because the spirits of the river were watchers who did not forgive easily, and Amari's return to human lands had already been felt in places deeper than roots and older than memory. And when the moon disappeared the following night, the spirits would come to claim what they believed was stolen from them. And if they succeeded, Amari would be taken beyond the veil where no sister could follow and no animal could protect, leaving Zahara alone with a power that would rot into madness without its other half. A low wind swept through the village as if the forest itself mourned what was coming. And even Nuru paced restlessly as Zahara explained that the only hope lay in returning to the forbidden river before the spirits arrived, not to drink again, but to beg, to offer something greater than fear, something only a united village could give, because the spirits listened not to strength, but to truth spoken together. The villagers argued in whispers, fear wrestling with loyalty, until Sephu stepped forward clutching a drum too big for his thin arms, and said that monsters were easier to fight than sadness, and that if Amari cried like a child, then maybe the spirits had forgotten what children sounded like. And his words spread through the crowd like sparks catching dry leaves, until Elder Baraka nodded and declared that Mabira would walk with Zahara and Amari into the forest, not with weapons raised but with drums, songs, and offerings of raw life, to remind the spirits that rules exist to protect love, not erase it. That night no one slept as preparations were made. Raw fish and fresh meat gathered, fruits and leaves woven into garlands, torches wrapped in herbs. And when darkness fell, without a moon the village formed a single moving body beneath the stars, Zahara and Amari at its center, Nuru leading the way, animals appearing silently from the trees to follow, as if summoned by an ancient call. And as they walked deeper into the forest, the air grew heavy with memory and magic, until at last the glowing river appeared ahead, shimmering blue and silver like a living eye opening to judge them. And Zahara stepped forward with shaking hands, knowing that whatever happened next would decide whether love could rewrite fate or whether the forest would take back what it had given. The river glowed brighter as Zahara stepped closer, its surface rippling without wind, as if something beneath it was breathing. And the forest fell completely silent except for the soft drum beats behind her and the uneven breath of Amari, whose massive chest rose and fell like a storm waiting to break, while the villagers stood together in a tight line holding torches, raw offerings, and woven leaves, their fear bound tightly by resolve. Because once the first spirit rose from the water, they all understood there would be no turning back from whatever judgment awaited them. Mist began to coil upward, thick and cold, wrapping around ankles and climbing toward faces as shapes formed inside it. Tall figures made of shadow and light with eyes that burned like stars trapped in water. And when the spirits spoke, their voices overlapped like many rivers crashing at once, asking why the chosen rule had been broken and why the cursed one walked again among humans when his fate had already been sealed. Zahara knelt immediately and pressed her forehead to the earth, her voice steady despite the tears soaking into the soil, telling them she did not come to steal power or escape consequence, but to return what had been twisted by love and ignorance. Admitting that she drank without knowing and that Amari drank because he trusted her, and that punishment had already been paid in years of pain, exile, hunger, and loneliness that no child should endure. The spirits shifted and the water churned harder as one stepped forward brighter than the rest, declaring that rules existed to protect balance, and that mercy without cost weakened the world. And Zahara lifted her head slowly then and offered herself instead, saying she would give up her strength, her bond with animals, her freedom to roam the forest, and even her life if it meant her brother could live whole and free among people again. Because love without sacrifice was only fear wearing a kind face. Gasps rippled through the villagers as Elder Baraka shouted that a village does not abandon its own. Stepping forward with Mama Rina and the others who laid down their offerings and spoke together, telling the spirits that Mabira accepted Zahara and Amari as family and would carry the weight of whatever balance was needed, promising to protect the forest, take only what was needed, waste nothing, and teach every child the cost of disrespecting old powers, because community itself was a living offering. The spirits grew silent, their eyes dimming slightly as they watched the people, the animals, the brother kneeling beside his sister, and the lion standing guard without command. And when they spoke again, their voices softened like rain falling into deep leaves, saying that balance is not broken by love, but by forgetting why rules exist, and that the curse would be lifted not by punishment, but by binding. Decreeing that Zahara and Amari would forever be tied to the raw life of the forest, unable to consume fire-touched food without losing what remained of the magic, but free from pain, free from transformation, and free to choose their path as long as they honored the land that shaped them. Lights surged from the river and washed over Amari first, and the villagers watched in stunned silence as his massive form began to shift, fur dissolving into mist, bones cracking softly as his body shrank and straightened, his arms pulling inward, his face smoothing into human lines while his eyes remained wild but clear, and when the light faded he stood shaking but whole, a young man scarred by memory rather than curse. And Zahara sobbed openly as she held him, feeling his heartbeat steady and human beneath her hands for the first time in years. The spirits turned then to Zahara and marked her brow with a faint glowing symbol that faded quickly but burned warm, telling her she would remain strong but never dominant, protected but never above consequence, reminding her that power borrowed from the earth must always return to it through care and restraint. And with that the mist receded, the water stilled, and the river dimmed until it looked like nothing more than flowing silver under starlight. Joy broke through the tension like sunrise as the villagers cheered, drums pounding, voices lifting, children laughing as Amari took his first unburdened steps, and even Nuru released a deep satisfied sound before turning back toward the forest where he belonged, brushing against Zahara one last time before melting into shadow, his duty complete. The journey back to Mabira felt lighter though exhaustion weighed heavy, and when dawn broke the village welcomed them not as strangers marked by fear, but as family reclaimed through courage, building a new hut near the forest edge where Zahara and Amari could live together, preparing raw meals with care and respect, learning which foods sustained them and which harmed them. And over time the villagers noticed that sickness grew rare. Crops flourished, and animals lingered peacefully near the farms as if the land itself approved of the change. Amari learned to speak again fully, his voice deep and gentle, helping hunters track without killing, teaching children how to listen to the forest rather than conquer it, while Zahara became a bridge between worlds, guiding rituals, settling disputes, and reminding everyone that fire is useful but not sacred, and that life taken must be honored before it is consumed. Stories of Mabira spread beyond the trees, tales of a girl who ate raw food and walked with lions, of a brother returned from beast to man, and of spirits who chose mercy when faced with unity, and travelers who came seeking power left with lessons instead, carrying the warning that shortcuts to strength always demand payment, and that love is the only currency spirits truly respect. Seasons passed, and children grew, and whenever the moon vanished from the sky the village gathered not in fear, but in remembrance, offering fruits to the forest, and singing the song Zahara taught them, the one about a river that remembers every step taken near it. And Zahara would watch from her doorway with Amari beside her, both older now, both marked but peaceful, knowing that the raw path they walked was not one of savagery, but of truth unhidden by fire. And so Mabira endured, a village shaped by a girl who refused cooked food not because she rejected humanity, but because she understood that some bonds are born before flame, before language, before rules, and must be honored as they are, raw, living, and brave enough to face the dark together.